when you turn the raw edge of a piece of fabric up to neaten it, that's known as a hem. And there is a variety of ways that you can do that. So the first one here is a single hem or a single turned hem. So I have neatened the raw edge of the fabric with a zigzag stitch. You can use an overlocker or you can use bias binding to enclose the edge. And I've pressed up the required amount of my hem, which I think is about 2 centimetres here. So I can choose to sew it from the wrong side, or I can sew it from the right side. Now if I sew it from the right side, I can't see how far I'm going to be sewing it, but you can measure. So you can measure your 2 centimetres there and follow that line, or you can sew it from the wrong side. So to make it easy, I'm going to sew it from the wrong side. I'm just going to use a regular straight stitch. I'm going to sew very close to the edge. If I sew in here somewhere, this edge is going to keep flipping up. So you do want to make sure that you really catch down that edge. So I'm going to position my fabric in the machine, back stitch to the end to secure my threads, and just stitch to the end. There is my hem, and all that needs now is a press. An alternative is the double hem or the double folded hem, and that's exactly as it says. You take your edge. There's no need to neaten this edge separately this time. I'm going to fold it the required amount, which in my case is about 1.5 to 2 centimetres. Then I'm going to fold it and press it again. Now I've already ironed that. Then again, you're going to stitch this edge down. You can do it from the wrong side so you can see the edge, or you can do it from the right side. I prefer to do mine from the wrong side. So I'm going to take this to the machine. So I've got my fabric positioned using the little inside notch on my presser foot, which is going to give me about a 2mm edge stitch. So again, as I said, you want to catch the edge down. You don't want the stitching to be in here somewhere, and allow this to flap up. Again, I'm using a 2.5mm straight stitch. I'm going to start with some back stitching. Continue down all the way down my hem. Now this is something you would use on usually lighter weight fabrics, but this is the traditional way to do denims. So jeans hems are done this way. Also things like cotton skirts, so more casual clothes. Also curtains, but if you were hemming curtains, you would be using a 10cm double hem. So that's 20 centimetres in total for the hem allowance. Here's my hem from back and from the front. So that's a double hem. If you had something like a tweed skirt or your trousers from a business suit, you wouldn't want to see the stitching on the front, such as in the case of the single hem or the double hem. So you would need to do something called a blind hem. So here's a section from a tweed garment. Also jackets and coats tend to be blind hemmed. So on the back, nothing on the front. So there is the stitching. You can just about see that, just holding the two layers together. So to do that, you can either use your machine or you can hand stitch it. So first I'm going to show you how to do the machine version. And if you buy ready-made curtains, they will be blind hemmed. To sew a blind hem by machine, you first need to neaten the raw edge. So I've done this with the overlocker, or you can use zigzag, or you could even use bias binding. Then you turn and press the hem to the wrong side of the fabric. Then from the wrong side, you're going to take the folded up hem and flip it back to the right side, leaving a small edge. So this is about 1 centimetre. Okay, so let me do that again. So there's our folded hem. So we're going to take this and flip it round. So when you look at the end, you have like an S shape. And you need to remember to leave this little edge down the side. So I'm not going to press this edge with the iron because I don't want to put our permanent crease into the fabric. But this is the edge we're just going to catch down with some stitches. Now, you can use a blind hem foot if you have one, and this is what a blind hem foot looks like, or this is what the blind hem foot looks like for my machine. But a blind hem foot is quite distinctive because it always has a wheel. More commonly there's a separate section with an edge which will slide, so there's a long screw and a wheel, and you'll actually have a separate section which slides. This, but once attached to the machine, the whole foot will slide, and that's just to help you with your alignment when stitching. So don't worry if your foot looks a bit different. If you're not sure what your blind hem foot is, you check your sewing machine manual. It'll have a number or a letter. The manual will tell you if you have one or not. If you don't have one included, you can probably buy it as an optional extra. But if you don't have one, you can either use your regular foot or your zigzag foot. And a lot of manuals for machines will tell you to use your zigzag foot to do a blind hem. So I'm going to fit this to the machine and position my fabric. I have my fabric positioned in the machine so that most of the stitching will happen on this little edge. So it will do some straight stitches, then one zigzag, and when it does the zigzag stitch you just want to catch the folded edge. If you go too far into the fabric, I'll show you what happens later. So I have my fold positioned down this edge of the foot here, but if you have the other style of foot with the separate section, you're butting your edge up against that part of the foot. So you can see that there is straight stitches happening on this side of the fabric. Then when the machine does its zigzag, it's just catching the fold. Now I'm going to go a bit further into the fold to show you what happens. So I've moved the fabric actually too far over, and the zigzag is completely stitching down all this fold. Then I'm going to go back and do the last section as it should be to show the contrast. So that is our blind hem. So you can see the stitches are just catching the folded edge. Just the point of the zigzag is catching it. Most of your stitching is on the single layer. Now I'm coming to the section that I've gone too far, encroached into the fabric. And then back at the end, a couple of the stitches to show what they should be like. Now when we look at that on the other side, what we should see are tiny dots of colour, of thread. Of course, if you were using a matching thread, you wouldn't see anything at all. So that should lie flat and can be pressed flat. When we come to the section that I went too far into the fabric, it's actually taken a little pinch out of the fabric and it's causing this puckering and bunching. So it's highly unlikely you'd ever be able to press that completely flat. And then back to the end, that's it back flat again. So that is your machine blind hem. Blind hem can be done by hand as well. So if you were going to hand stitch it, you would prepare the hem in the same way as for machine stitching. So I've neatened the raw edge, turned and pressed the hem up to the wrong side. And again I'm working from the wrong side. So again I'm going to make that fold, so pressing the hem back to the right side. And this can be done on something like if you were doing the hem of a tweed or a skirt belonging to a business suit or trousers where you didn't want to see the hem. So I'm going to fasten off my thread. So I've got a knot in the end and I'm taking an extra stitch into, again, this little flange. Keeping the fabric taut across the back of my fingers, I'm going to come down into the fold and just take a couple of threads really from the inside of the fold. Bearing in mind anything we do into here and to the bottom is going to show on the right side. So sometimes if it's a thick fabric or a textured fabric, you can actually just pick up some threads on the surface. You don't need to go right the way through the fabric. So I'm coming back up. So you'll notice that for a right-handed person, we're working left to right, but the needle is going in right to left. And this is actually like a herringbone stitch. So there it is there. So I'm doing a crisscross motion. Again, into a tiny stitch on the bottom, bigger stitch on the top. So I'm getting a crisscrossing effect with the threads. Bigger stitch on the top. So, tiny stitch on the bottom. taut. Every few stitches I'm going to take a double stitch into there, just for a bit of extra security. So it means if the thread breaks, the whole lot isn't going to come down. And you'll see there's a bit of movement there. I'm not pulling too tight, and it's got a little bit give in it. So that way the hem will move with the garment, and if you accidentally step on the hem, then it's got enough give in it, so hopefully it won't all burst and come down. So you would just continue right the way along the hem, around the bottom of the garment. And this is, as I said, suitable for more formal wear, so skirts, trousers, and also jackets and coats, which you wouldn't want to see an actual straight stitched hem. It would either be a machined blind hem, or you could do a hand stitched blind hem. And once you come to the end, not that I'm at the end yet, but you would just 2 or 3 little stitches to finish off. Now, if you're left-handed, I'll attempt to do one going in the other direction. So I'm going to start my thread off. So I have my knot in the thread. So I'm going to start it off again. You need to keep your fabric taut across the back of your fingers. Now this time I'm working from right to left, but the needle is going in left to right. Now bear in mind I'm a right-handed person, trying to sew left-handed. So again, we're just going alternatively up and down. So this is a slightly flattened form of the stitch that you may know as herringbone, or the embroidery version of it anyway. Yeah, I'm struggling to pick up that side of the fabric. There, that'll do, one thread. So hopefully, if you're left-handed, you'll be doing a better job of it than I am. So we'll finish off there. And again, just a double stitch to finish off and secure my thread. Obviously, if you were doing a trouser leg, you would actually meet, you'd come back to the place where you started. So we're going to cut the thread. So there we have hand stitch blind hem, right hand style, hand stitch blind hem, left hand style. So from the front, fold that back round to the front. So the nice thing about doing it that way is that the stitches are covered up, so they are in some way protected. I'll turn it around the right way. So there, that would be your hem from the inside. So you're not seeing the stitches, they're protected, so your heel of your shoe is less likely to be catching on that. Then from the front, you see absolutely nothing, or very little, tiny dots. Again, if you were using a matching thread, it would be completely invisible.